Well, the time has finally come for me to do a jerky making video. I have done countless cooking videos, so if you guys are looking for recipes of different ways to cook duck and goose meat, there is a playlist on the channel, like 20-30 videos of just cooking ducks and geese. So check those out if you're interested. But today, we're gonna be making some jerky, and it's not the whole muscle, slice it up, season it, dehydrate it jerky. It's actually the kind that I prefer, which is extruded from a jerky gun. So it's actually really simple to make, and we're gonna make a pretty small batch. I think we're gonna just do 4 pounds of duck meat, and you can do this with duck or goose, it doesn't matter, it's the same process regardless. The things that you're going to need: you're gonna need a grinder, you're gonna need a jerky gun. This is actually pretty gear heavy to do, so it takes a lot, but you'll also, not necessary, but you will probably eventually want a meat mixer. It makes such a big difference when you're making jerky or summer sausage or any of that stuff. So yeah, you're basically gonna need your grinder, your jerky gun, and your meat mixer. You can mix it by hand, but I feel like the meat mixer actually does a better job of mixing that seasoning all the way through. Another thing that's really helpful when you're doing this is a scale, so you can weigh everything, because everything with jerky and sausage is done by weight. And you're also going to need seasoning. So I use this stuff. I will leave some links to everything I use down below, and we're gonna be making jalapeno jerky today. This thing comes with instructions, everything you need right here in the box. One last thing, you're gonna need one of these. Highly recommend this for any duck hunter. This is a metal detector, so you can find all the shot that is still in the breast. So if you guys are interested, I will leave this link down below as well. This thing works fantastic. So that's all the gear you're gonna need. So let's go ahead and get into making the jerky. So I just weighed it up. We got about 3.5 pounds of meat or so. What we're going to do is, you want your meat still pretty frozen, like kind of half frozen, half thawed. It tends to go through the grinder a lot better that way. And so all you gotta do is get a big knife and chop it up into little cubes that'll fit in the grinder. So I like to, when it's all frozen up, like it's been in a 1 gallon bag, just in a big wad, I like to just cut it up, just like this, and then come back through and cut it into, I mean that piece is still pretty big, so something like that, that'll fit through the grinder and flow through nice and easy. Now this is a very important step, because this saves your teeth and it can also save your grinder. I've seen a grinder get pretty mangled up by a BB that went through it. So these are cheap, easy to use. We're gonna try this. Yep, it's on. So you want to get it away from everything pretty much. And I just run it over. I've never done it like this before. It's actually a good idea. But you just run it over and see if you'll find any BBs. This thing is actually pretty accurate. So that's surprising. There's like no BBs. I must shoot them all in the head. It's got to be what it is. So those are all ready for the grinder. What I like to use is the fine plate. You can do coarse first, then fine, but I haven't had any issues running everything through just on the fine. So this grinder, this is actually a pretty beast of a grinder. It's like a half horse number 8. It's a huge upgrade from the standard countertop model that I've used previously. So if you're doing mass quantities of this stuff, having a big grinder makes a big difference. So if you're gonna invest your money into anything meat processing wise, put most of it into the grinder. You will thank me later. So let's go ahead and get rolling on this. So there's always like a little bit left that doesn't get ground. So what I'm gonna try to do here, we'll see if this works. We're gonna take some of the stuff that's ground, and we're gonna just put that in behind it so we can scoop that out and still use it for the jerky. There it is. That is our ground duck meat. First thing we gotta do, dump the meat in there. We're gonna pop this bad boy open. It comes with the seasoning and it comes with the cure. and the instructions. So there's different instructions for different ways of making this. So this one, I'm looking for jerky out of ground meat. So you guys can see on the instructions that it says for 3 pounds, 2 tablespoons, 1.5 teaspoons, and then 3 tablespoons, 1 teaspoon for 4 pounds. So I might just do 3 tablespoons of the seasoning since we're doing 3.5 pounds, and then 2 tablespoons and 1 teaspoon of the cure. So we're gonna split the difference. Okay, first up, we're gonna put some of this cure in here. 1. That was not enough. That was left over from another old box. 3 tablespoons of the seasoning. Slap that lid on, and we'll just get to cranking. I like to mix this until it gets pretty tacky, just so then I know like all the cure's worked its way through and all the seasoning is through. So that's a good stopping point, is when things get pretty tacky and it looks very well incorporated. I do have one little secret ingredient that I like to use. Liquid smoke. I like to put it in there because I'm generally doing this on the dehydrator I've got. I have done jerky on the Traeger, it turns out great, but just for like ease of use, I really like using that dehydrator because I don't have enough trays to do this much on the Traeger. So I put liquid smoke in it to give it a little bit of a smoky flavor. I feel like I went a little light on the last batch I made, so we'll add a decent amount. Just smells smoky, so we're gonna add, sure, we'll go with that. Whatever amount that was, a splash. That's what they say on those cooking shows. And back to the mixing. This batch is looking like it needs a little bit of water. So whatever that is, a 1/4 cup or so. The instructions say to add a 1/4 cup of water per pound of meat, which personally, I don't know about that, especially with the way I clean my ducks and get them frozen. There's a lot of water in there, and it just seems like it's a lot of water to add. So I just like to eyeball it. And this is what it should look like when you're done mixing. Kind of tacky, very well mixed through. The color changes a little bit because of that cure. This is the most important part now. You're gonna want to cover this and let it sit. You want it to sit for a few hours at least, just so then the flavors can kind of intermingle. It's still kind of frozen. Like there's still some frozen chunks in there. So those need to thaw out, otherwise you're gonna clog up the jerky gun. I found that one out. And so you'll end up with an overall better product if you let this sit even a day or overnight. You're gonna get a very, very, very consistent product. So I highly recommend covering it, throw it in the fridge, let it rest for 2 to 4 hours at the minimum. All right, so we've let this sit for a while, and I think it's about time to do this. We're going to be loading up the jerky gun tube. So it's a little bit messy. That's just kind of the nature of the beast. So we're gonna make little meatballs, stuff them in here, use this tamper, and I found that if you don't put the gun part in, it actually stuffs a lot fuller and better. I got my dehydrator. I do need to upgrade the dehydrator. I've had this one since I was in high school, and it works, but using this and a round dehydrator, they don't work well together because the nozzle I've got spits out 2 lines of jerky at once. So doing that on a round thing is kind of difficult. So it works, it's just, I need to add that to my Christmas list, is a square dehydrator. So you want to make sure you wash your hands, of course, but you just stuff it in there as good as you can. It's pretty tacky at this point because that cure has had time to do its thing. And it's been mixed up pretty heavily. It smells good. I think this jerky is going to turn out really good. It just works just like a caulking gun. So if you've used one of those before, you should be all right. I'm going to take my time doing this because I feel like I've made them pretty too thin in the past. So I'm going to try and make them a little bit thicker. all that's left to do now is go ahead and throw the top part of this dehydrator in and get this thing cooking. So that 3.5 pound mark is usually pretty good for this dehydrator, so I did all of it. So it's gonna take probably around 8 hours or so to dehydrate. So you gotta plan accordingly when you do this, because towards the end you really wanna check it, otherwise they can turn into like really dried out chips. So you wanna make sure you pull these off at the right time. So I found usually about 8 hours is the mark to hit. The dehydration process is done. Here is what we are left with. It's some jerky. These look kind of like those little seed pods from my honey locust tree. But this is such a simple way to do it. You're able to do, I mean, if you got quite a few ducks in your freezer, you need to do something with them, this is a great way to do it. I messed up and left the dehydrator running way too long, so I got some crispy jerky, but it's still gonna taste fine. It tastes just fine. I just tried a piece. But yeah, you wanna be careful and watch it and pay attention to it. I totally forgot about it and it ran way too long. So don't forget about it. Otherwise you're gonna end up with stuff that kind of resembles a dog treat, but still tastes good, just a little bit too dry for my personal liking. So if you guys do this, let me know down in the comments. So if you enjoyed it, leave me a thumbs up and I will catch you guys on the next one.